you know, that would make a good presentation. And I didn't have a speaker for today, and so I thought this would be an opportunity.
Good.
So I'm going to work through a little bit of what is on the website, and I suggest that if you are interested, you can go to the website yourself. So the person who commissioned the Vasa was Gustav II Adolf, which I found a strange name. And he was considered one of the most successful Swedish kings in terms of success in warfare. When the Vasa was built, he'd been in power for more than a decade, and Sweden was embroiled in a war with Poland, Lithuania, and looked apprehensively at the development of the 30 Years' War in then Germany. And the war had been raging since 1618. And so he commissioned this vast ship. He was a keen artillerist and saw the potential of ships as gun platforms. And so he had a large, heavily armed ship built, and he wanted it to make a dramatic statement. And indeed, the ship did. So there were 5 such ships built after the Vasa, and the second ship was called the Applet, or Apple, and it was built simultaneously with the Vasa. The only significant difference between the design of the Vasa and her sister ship was an increase in the width of about a meter. And so that made just a little difference, and so the Vasa unfortunately did not succeed very well. And so here we have the Palace of the King, painted by a Dutch artist, and Maria Eleonora, who was married to Gustav, and Gustav died in the Battle of Lutzen in November of 1632. And so we will go from there to the disaster and what actually happened with the ship. So actually I'm going to take you back to a PowerPoint here, and we'll look at this map. So you can see from here where the ship began in the spring of 1626. It was constructed and then launched in 1627. And in spring of 1628, it was moved down to Gammelstad and along the warp. They call it warped, and what that means is that the ship was actually dragged with an anchor. And then it set sail down at the bottom left there and sailed 1,300 meters on the 10th of August, and it sank just below Beckholmen, which was the old castle that was there. And so we'll go back. Well, actually, let me just read you a little bit here. It was mid-afternoon when at last it was time. After many delays, frustrations with the supply of guns, a change of captain, the newly fitted out Vasa was anchored below the castle with its cannon finally on board and the crew manning their stations. The quay was packed with people and the water teemed with small craft, carrying people who wanted to watch the mighty war machine slip its moorings and sail from Stockholm. And it sailed 1,300 meters. So there were a lot of witnesses there to take a look at what was happening. And so we will go now to the timeline. By the way, the day was calm, and there was only wind, a light wind breeze from the southwest, but the ports were open. The ports of the ship were open because there was supposed to be a gun salute, and that certainly contributed to the sinking of the ship. So in the winter of 1624-25, Gustav commissioned the boat, and he signed a contract with a Dutch master shipwright, Heinrich Piebertsen, and his business partner, Ernst de Groot. And he wanted to have the most powerful ship built in the world, because he wanted to impress. And so, in 1626, the master shipwright faded away. He died. And the construction had already started, but he could no longer supervise. And so a new ship, the new ship was built by Heine Jacobsen, barely a year later. And in 1627, the machine of war is launched. 69 meters long, more than 50 meters tall, from the keel to the top of the mainmast. The ship weighs over 1,200 tons, once outfitted with 10 sails, 64 cannons, 120 tons of ballast, and hundreds of sculptures. This ship is a showpiece to all who would see her. And we'll take a look a little bit at the artwork that is on that ship later. You can see some of the artwork along the side of the boat and the stern here. So this is 1628, summer. The admiral doesn't listen to warning bells. Sofring Hansen was the captain supervising the construction, and calls Vice Admiral Klaus Fleming down to the ship moored at the Royal Palace because he's worried. He has 30 men run back and forth across the deck, and the ship rolls alarmingly. The Admiral has the demonstration stopped, afraid the ship will sink at the quay. Under pressure from the king to get the ship to sea, he orders Sofring to sail anyway. Months later, the Vasa sets off on its first and last voyage. And in August of 1628, 1,300 meters and no farther, still within sight of the shipyard where it was built, Vasa heels to port under a gust, and water gushes in through the open gun ports. Within minutes, the ship is lying on the seabed 32 meters below. Thousands of Stockholm inhabitants witness the tragic scene, together with several foreign ambassadors. What began in hope and ambition ends in tragedy and farce. In August of 1628, a fearful royal council writes to tell the king of the disaster. An inquest is launched. The ship's officers claim innocence. The builders are adamant that they built the ship according to the design the king approved. The experts believe the ship had too little belly and not enough hull to carry the heavy upper works. The blame falls on the designer Heinrich Piebertsen for the poor proportions. Master Henrik, dead more than a year, cannot defend himself and does not need to be punished. Yes, that's it. So they try to fish up the cannons. The sunken ship is a tempting target for salvors and assorted chancers. Repeated attempts to raise the ship fail. It is firmly stuck in the mud at the harbor bottom. Finally, 35 years after the sinking, a team of divers led by Albrecht von Trelleborn and Andreas Peckel succeed in bringing up almost all of Vasa's cannons. They use a recently perfected invention, the diving bell, to reach the ship, rip up the deck, and extract the guns, which are then sold abroad. In 1920, Vasa is nearly turned into furniture. Two brothers from Oskarshamn, Simon and Leonard Alshanks, applied for permission to salvage ships sunk in Stockholm harbour between Beckholmen, where Vasa lies, and Tvivelviken. They planned to blow up the wrecks to get black oak, waterlogged wood, which is popular in Sweden for Art Deco furniture. But the authorities say no. A crucial decision that makes it possible for the Vasa Museum to exist today. And in August of 1956, Anders Frantzen, a fuels engineer, finally gets a bite. Dark winter days poring over old documents in dusty archives, rainy summer days dragging the bottom of Stockholm harbour have led to this. After his drag has once again caught an obstruction on the bottom, his coring device has returned to the surface with a plug of black waterlogged oak. Another core 20 meters away produces the same result. There is something big, old, and wooden on the bottom in front of the island of Beckholmen. Frantzen has enough evidence to persuade the Navy to send a diving team to investigate. Could it be the Vasa? So in September of 1956, they have the first dive. And per Edwin Faulting, the Navy's chief salvage diver, encounters an enormous wooden wall with 2 rows of openings. It is an old warship standing upright on the bottom. It must be the Vasa. Divers explore the wreck and realize that it is in astonishing condition. Intact to the upper gun deck and with the foremast still standing. The water is too cold and fresh for shipworms, the destroyers of wooden ships in the world's oceans. Centuries of raw sewage dumped into the harbor have created a dead zone at the bottom where even bacteria cannot survive. Yeah, right. So in September 1958, Swedish radio interrupts its regular programming and broadcasts direct from salvage operation when one of Vasa's cannons is brought up from the deep. Each new find, each twist and turn in the saga of raising a ship is a news story. Vasa emerges on the international stage as a celebrity, and per Edwin Faulting becomes a media hero, a tough, no-nonsense dive boss, every man getting the job done. And so that's September 1958, and so a year later, in August of 1959, the Vasa moves for the first time in 331 years. The proposals are many and imaginative, and everything from filling the Vasa with ping pong balls to freezing it in a giant ice cube. But the Neptune company insists on tried and tested method, which is used and has been used since the Middle Ages to raise sunken ships. Divers have spent more than 2 years digging tunnels and passing cables under the ship up to the floating pontoons. On August the 20th, 1959, the pumps start on the pontoons and Vasa frees itself from the mud. Can you imagine that great? Can't do that. The ship is lifted and moved under the water surface in 15 stages, and in September, Vasa lies in a depth of 17 meters by the island of Castleholmen. Divers will spend another year and a half preparing the ship for final lift. I guess as I read through all of this and looked at it, it really blew my mind just how long it takes to do something like this, how long the process is, and although they don't talk about it, how much it must cost. And so, April 1961, the end of a long beauty sleep. Many Stockholm residents probably remember that it was Monday, the 24th of April, 1961. People by the thousands were crowded in with Swedish and international media around Castleholmen when Vasa first appeared from the depth after 333 years of hibernation. A ship from the 17th century is headline material in newspapers from around the world. And then in February of 1962, for the first time, Vasa meets the public. The ship is ready to be displayed to the general public at a newly constructed Vasa shipyard, where visitors can see Vasa while a team of conservators, carpenters, and other technicians work to preserve the ship. The museum opens with a salute from 2 of Vasa's cannons. Public interest is enormous and success immediate. In 1962, 439,300 buy a ticket to see the ship and its unique finds. And 3 months later, in April of 1962, Operation Preserve Vasa begins, and they use polyethylene glycol to replace the water in the waterlogged wood. And while the hull of the ship is sprayed around the clock with the help of 500 nozzles and an elaborate pumping and filtering system, and this treatment continues for another 17 years until 1979. Loose objects were placed in baths. And from there, they go to the drying out process. And so, yeah, exactly. Some things just take time. Even after being sprayed for 17 years, the ship has a long way to go. The wood has to dry slowly to avoid cracking, and over the next 10 years, the humidity gradually is lowered. In fact, drying will go on for decades until the ship stabilizes completely. And in 1989, after a brief investigation, bones from 11 people who died when the Vasa sank were buried in a somber ceremony at the National Naval Cemetery. In 1989, the grave is opened. Well, that was 1963, and new, more widely ranging investigations start. Researchers have been able, with the aid of modern science, to tell us what the dead looked like in life, what food they ate, and what diseases and injuries they had had. In 2004, 10 of these people became the focus of a special exhibit at the Vasa Museum, where visitors can see their remains, their possessions, and look into their reconstructed eyes. Did you see that when you were there? That must have been amazing to think that you're looking at people who had lived so long ago. And in 1990, Vasa gets a new home. 384 proposals from all over the Nordic countries are received when an architectural competition to build a new Vasa museum is launched in 1981. Swedish architects, Haida Manson Arkitektkontor, wins against tough competition, and on 15th of June 1990, the new museum is officially opened. The ship is the centerpiece of themed exhibits about all aspects of naval life in the early 17th century. It's interesting with this museum, the masts stick out above the roof. And you may or may not have noticed, but the PowerPoint that was on at the beginning had a picture of the museum. And so, in 2000, weather is terrible, rain nearly constant, tens of thousands of wet visitors raise the humidity in the museum, and it swings wildly during each day as overworked climate plant tries to catch up. Then alarm bells ring for the conservation staff. Yellow and white spots appear on the ship and many of the artifacts. These suggest that high humidity is combining with sulfur in the wood to produce destructive acids. Media reports trumpet that the ship is in danger of dissolving away before visitors' eyes. The immediate solution is an entirely new state-of-the-art climate plant online in 2004 and the launch of an international research project to understand what is happening in the wood and correct it. And I would guess that this issue, this problem, is not unique to this preservation. I think that similar problems have happened in Norway with the Viking ships. And so in 2011, the 50th anniversary, and they had a record number of visitors, over 1.2 million, and over 90% of the 98% of the original structure survives, including masts and sails. So it does not look like a wreck, but a ship waiting to start the next voyage. And in 2014, the roar of battle. In 2013, an exact copy of one of Vasa's cannons is cast at Tierp's Jernbrook. A year later, after building a replica section of Vasa as a target, researchers test-fire the gun over 50 times. They discover that the cannon has a potential range of over 1,000 meters. Think about that. That's a kilometer. But the rolling of the ship would make it impossible to hit anything at that distance. So actual combat range was probably less than 500 meters. The shot travels at velocities up to and over the speed of sound, and every shot fired at the ship's side punches a hole completely through up to 80 centimeters of solid oak. That's almost a meter. So just think about that. And in 2015, the Vasa Museum is 9th place in the world out of the top 10 list of the world's best museums, according to TripAdvisor. Would you agree with that? That it is one of the better museums in the world? And Elspeth commented about that as well. And who else has seen that? Who's been there? Chris, I guess, has been there. Yes. You too? You think it's really?
Been there, done that.
Yeah, been there, done that.
Just a quick aside.
Uh-huh.
If you're there and you want to take this picture, you are about 10 feet from the hull. It is incredible, your access to this vessel. And at the stern, there's a built-up set of galleries, so you can get right up to the top level of that transom, and the sculpture is absolutely incredible.
Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a look at the art, and then afterwards, I just have to find it here. Afterwards, I have a video that Elspeth brought back from the museum, and it goes into, in a little more detail, the salvage of the boat. And so you might be interested in looking at that. And so if you look at this is the figurehead. And this figurehead is a lion, and it is 9 feet long. And so you just get a sense of the power I beg your pardon, it's 3 meters long, and the lion is holding the coat of arms of the Vasa dynasty on its front paws, and it has been preserved. And since medieval times, the Stockholm lion has been a symbol of Swedish royal power, and it's easy to see the message. Gustav II Adolf was an heir to the emperors of the Roman Empire and was going to build his own empire. And if you look at some of the details here of the sculptures that are on the boat, it's really quite incredible how detailed they were. And that's the stern. I'm not sure, no, we don't have any others. Just a minute, under there. That's part of the stern as well. So the original was highly colorful and well painted. So that's all I'm going to do from the website. I encourage you, if you're interested in more, to go to the website and just look up Vasa Museum and you will find it. And right now, we'll take a look at the video. And I'm not sure, we've had trouble with the sound, so I'm going to put the microphone near the speakers for the computer, and I hope that it is loud enough.
You want to make it full screen?
Yeah, no, I will. Can you hear that?
No.
We're just going to see if we can use this. Can't find the.
Shellbacks.